A stretch limo arrived at my apartment in Santa Monica to whisk me away to LAX, where I hopped on the plane to San Francisco. There I was met by a fancy town car and taken to the Mare Island Naval Base in Vallejo, where Barry's next movie, Sphere, was being filmed. The shipyard naval base had existed for almost 150 years and was closed in 1996. It was now being used for other purposes, including film production. As mentioned, the book had been written by Michael Crichton and had been adapted by a couple of other writers. Frankly, I thought it was a very complicated script, as did Barry, so he wanted me to help him improve it. The story centered on a group of American scientists played by Dustin Hoffman, Samuel L. Jackson, and Sharon Stone, who descend to the bottom of the South Pacific Ocean, where a huge spacecraft has been discovered and apparently been buried for nearly 300 years. But then it's not quite what it seems. The vessel emits a distant hum, suggesting it may harbour life. But does it? There were giant killer squid and beautiful-looking but deadly jellyfish, as well as horrors that might be figments of the characters' imaginations. It's hard to describe the plot of Sphere, other than to say it's filled with numerous and rather weird psychological twists and turns. Anyway, I guess you'll just have to see it for yourself to get the full picture, so to speak. I was delighted to be working with Dustin again, as well as Miles Perman, who was the son of Barry's second cousin, Rona, who'd become a dear friend. I'd cast Miles in a small role in Avalon in Baltimore, and he then went on to work behind the camera as an assistant director in television and film. When I found out that he was in between jobs, I asked Barry if he could work on Sphere. "Why not?" was Barry's response. Miles was well liked, especially by the talent, and nothing was too much trouble for him, so it was a no-brainer. Part of his job on Sphere was to take care of Sharon Stone, and they got on like a house on fire. He also got along with Samuel L. Jackson, whose prime interest, apart from his work on the film, was getting in a game of golf whenever he could. Miles made sure that Sam had plenty of time on the golf course, and even joined him in a game on weekends along with other crew members. In the meantime, Sharon Stone was focused on keeping her gorgeous body in shape by having her personal Pilates instructor on set, together with the appropriate exercise equipment. Dustin also joined in, although I'm not exactly sure it was his thing. One day, while Barry and the crew were setting up underwater shots, a few of us were sitting around outside in the sun with Sharon. She said that she was looking forward to the weekend because her best friend Mimi was going to be visiting from LA. As it happens, 12 years previously, Mimi had lived in my apartment for a few months while I was on location in Baltimore working on Tin Men. Mimi was married to Wes Craven, best known for directing horror movies such as A Nightmare on Elm Street. But it wasn't a happy marriage. She was desperate to move out, and when my friend Karen Locke knew I was going to be away, she asked if her friend Mimi Craven could sublet my place. Although she'd be moving from a mansion in Santa Monica to my very modest one-bedroom apartment, she seemed delighted to do so. I told Sharon Stone of my connection with her friend Mimi, and she said, "Oh my God, was that your cute little apartment with the orange shag carpet?" As a matter of fact, the carpet was green shag, but I did have a fair amount of orange accessories. Don't ask. She might have got the colour of the carpet wrong, but the fact that Sharon Stone had been in my apartment gave me something to brag about. I felt like putting a plaque above my front door reading, "Sharon Stone was here." Going back a bit at my story, when I lived in Toronto, I was a volunteer at a Catholic group home for troubled girls and a big sister to a number of girls, including Lynn, who I met when she was 16. She'd been abused as a child and was in and out of foster homes. She was a constant runaway, just couldn't stay in one place for too long. She left the group home and hitchhiked to Northern California, where she met Melvin. She didn't stay with him for long, but the relationship resulted in a pregnancy. Back at the group home in Toronto, she was determined to keep the baby. She informed Melvin, who was fully supportive and wanted her to go back to California, but she refused. Because she was unable to stay in the group home with the baby, Lynn moved in with me for the last 2 months of her pregnancy. I'd encouraged her to stop smoking and drinking while she was pregnant, and while she slipped a few times, for the most part, she took care of herself. Melvin phoned her regularly, making sure she was eating right and recommending various vitamins. When the baby was born, a little girl I'll call Teresa, Lynn asked me to be the godmother. Melvin then arranged for mother and daughter to travel to Northern California. It all seemed to be working out, but before too long, Lynn was back in Toronto with Teresa in tow. I'll cut a very long and complicated story short to say that Lynn's lifestyle was less than healthy for a child, and Teresa was headed for a life in the foster care system since I was unable to take care of her. However, I informed social services that she had a father who was very responsible and wanted her. The outcome was that Teresa went to live with her father, and although Lynn was there for a while and tried hard to play at happy families, she just didn't know how. Consequently, she returned to Toronto and a life of drugs and prostitution, while Melvin became a great father to Teresa. Lynn died of AIDS at the age of 38, and sadly hadn't had any contact with her daughter for close to 15 years. A friend came to LA from Toronto with Lynn's belongings, and we travelled together to hand them over to my goddaughter, who's now living with her father, stepmother and stepsister in Vallejo. I hadn't seen her since she was 3 years old, and it was wonderful to see how she'd grown into such a beautiful young woman who graduated college and was headed for a successful and somewhat ironic career in social work. This is a bit of a long-winded story. Sorry about that, but I wanted to explain the circumstances and coincidence of filming in Vallejo, where my goddaughter now lived. Being there for a few weeks gave me a wonderful opportunity to get to know Teresa and to be able to tell her more about her mother Lynn, the happy stories. My friend Judy called me and asked when I was due to have my breast biopsy. When I told her I hadn't arranged it yet, she almost hit the roof. "Does Barry know about your situation?" Well, it wasn't something I particularly wanted to share with him, but when Judy threatened to tell him if I didn't arrange a biopsy right away, I decided to call my doctor and make the appointment. Because I was sure the results would show that the lump was benign, I didn't think there was any need to rush. My new doctor was now thinking otherwise and arranged a biopsy the following week. Of course, I had to ask Barry if it was okay for me to leave for a few days, and I told him the reason why. He was quite concerned that I hadn't done it earlier, especially since his sister had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. Fortunately, most of the revisions had been made on the Sphere script for the upcoming shoot days, so it wouldn't be a problem if I left for a few days. And you gotta take care of that, Barry told me. In the next episode, you'll hear of my life-changing decision and how it got me onto a TV show. Thanks for listening.